It all starts with this. This is the ultimate power.
Hello everybody, it's me, your good friend Sparky, and welcome back to Sonic Heroes. We are heading off into Stage 11, Hang Castle.
Are you sure this is the right way?
Affirmative.
What's up? Something on your mind?
Well, never mind. Let's go. That blue hedgehog like me. What did the doctor say about my memory? And just who am I?
Oh, Shadow, those are questions you are going to be asking yourself a lot in the future. In fact, you could say that there's going to be an entire game based around that exact one question. And, well, we'll get to that when we get to that. We have more important things to talk about at the moment. That being Hang Castle. A definitely visually creative stage with a very spooky feel to it. In fact, if I had posted this series on time the way I really wanted to, I could have made this a Halloween episode. Or like a Halloween series, I guess. With the reasoning that this stage exists, and it's very spooky, and it's got ghosts, and pumpkin-headed individuals. It definitely could have fit, and it still manages to be a pretty creepy stage overall. We don't get a lot of haunted feeling stages in Sonic games, I guess. There are examples like the pyramid in Sonic and Knuckles, and of course good old Pumpkin Hill in Sonic Adventure 2. In fact, Sonic Adventure 2 does have a lot of stages that you can consider haunted, with a lot of ghosts and things like that. But this stage in particular is definitely very twisty and turny and kind of messes with your head a little bit. These switches are littered about the stage, and what they do is they cause the entire layout of the castle to flip upside down. That then switches your perspective and switches the way you move about things, and you've got to keep flipping the castle right side up and upside down all over and over again in order to make progress forward. Conceptually and visually, I do like this stage a lot. It's even got a share of unique enemies in it too, like those wizard enemies that we just promptly exploded. They have the ability to sort of flip upside down and switch their modes, which switches their function. In fact, in one of their modes, they can actually heal enemies, so you kind of want to maybe not let them do that, because that would definitely be a bad thing, especially if there are some larger, tougher enemies scattered about. It all fits aesthetically with it, where you've got, like, a wizard, and you've got ghosts, and you've got swinging scythes and things like that. The stage overall is just a really great stage to look at. And, best not to, fall off when the ghosties appear and try to knock you to your doom, or that would be a bad thing, if I'm being perfectly honest. But yeah, I love the way this stage looks, and I love the way, like, it conceptually is. But unfortunately, this stage and the accompanying stage after it, I feel I must declare probably the worst stages in Sonic Heroes. Definitely the least fun. For the most part, when playing through these stages with the different teams, they end up feeling rather slow, especially considering several stages in this game already feel kind of slow. And just the fact that you're constantly having to hit switches and wait for those animations to play out, and you're swapping around, and there's not as many places where you can just easily kind of speed along. It overall just ends up creating kind of a slow and monotonous time. Especially in Team Dark's case, because this is definitely where the stage length really kind of goes overboard. With Team Sonic, it's also pretty bad, and also phasing through scythes swinging through the air. That's pretty neat. And for another particular mission in our lineup of missions too, it gets especially worse on one of these stages. But that's in the next episode. Don't worry, we'll have a lot of fun with that, I'm sure. Yeah, overall, even though visually and creatively this stage is just great, you can tell that the developers probably had a lot of fun making this up and letting the spooky vibes flow. It's like little details like the tops of these towers, the floors being spiderweb pattern and things like that. And there are invisible pathways guided by torches and things like that that you gotta go find, and everything's flipping upside down, and there's green water, and it's so cool. It's so fun. Also, here's this robot wizard here healing the enemies. We gotta make sure they can't do that. You can tell they're doing it when there's music notes coming out of the robots. And that's no good. That's no good indeed. They can flip over, like I said, to a different mode, a different wizard, a blue wizard mode, in fact. Though I can't really quite remember off the top of my head exactly what they do. You don't see them as often. Well, that's fine. It's great. It's all good. It's fine. But yeah, man, I really want to like this stage better than I do. It's unfortunately a case where aesthetically it's definitely a 10 out of 10 and it's super freaking cool, but gameplay wise it just kind of drags things to a halt. We are about 7 minutes into this stage, and there's still a lot to go. It's like it took the stage length from the stages previously and just kind of amplified it out of nowhere, so the stage just goes on and on and on, and it just doesn't feel like it wants to stop. It just, yeah. The following stages after this pair are definitely not great in that regard either, but I almost feel like they're more tolerable for some reason, because they end up being faster in spots. This stage, it has its fast moments, but you've also got a lot of really slow moments like this, where we're wandering around the outside of a tower, and now we have to go inside here and climb all the way back up the tower after we just flipped it upside down and fell the entire length of the tower just so we can switch things around again. And man, it just this is not the worst of it, but as you can tell, I already have a lot to complain about. Whenever I play through Sonic Heroes, I always kind of dread getting to this point because I know it ends up being just kind of a slog to get through. It's not necessarily particularly fun. And I mean, all of the Sonic games will have a stage like this where it just becomes a chore to play through. I can think of them in plenty of moments when my favorite game ever, favorite Sonic game ever, Sonic Adventure 2, where, especially with the treasure hunting stages, a couple of those start getting rather lengthy and just tiresome to get through. But this particular stage is definitely that stage for Sonic Heroes. We do have this cool section here, though, where we flip upside down, and we notice, oh, that Eggman statue down there, the bottom half of it looks pretty interesting, doesn't it? Huh. I wonder who this glowy-eyed individual is right here. Interesting, interesting. Yeah, but still. And you have this part. You're just kind of slowly making your way around, and you're shooting the friends at it. You're shooting your friends at it. It's fine. And you gotta whip around the different poles, and you gotta wait for them to finish their flippy-whippy animations. You can tell they had a lot of fun trying to put together, like, a cool stage and a very visually interesting stage, but it just... Man, it just doesn't really work that well for me. Maybe I'm just a stick in the mud. Maybe I just can't appreciate the work that went into this or something like that. Hey, it does have its strong points, like I said, but I don't know. Like, I mean, we've got this cool section here where we're running down the side of a tower. All Sonic games have to have a cool section where you're running down the side of something. Sonic Adventure had it, Sonic Adventure 2 had it, and Sonic Heroes follows suit. It's just... I just have a hard time getting into it otherwise. Well, yeah, I'm probably just being a stick in the mud. I'm sure if you can get into the cool Halloween-y vibes of the stage, you can have no problem whatsoever with this. But it's just... It's not for me, unfortunately. I don't like it when a game feels like it's sort of trying to take up my time. And this stage, in particular, it definitely feels like that. Though, the next stage following is really not that much better. But thankfully, this one is at its end, just under 11 minutes long. Man, I feel like there definitely could have been a lot more focus on stage length balance in this game, don't you? Especially considering I don't think Team Rose's stages are much longer than normal. Yeah, just average. That's about right, Shadow. That's about how I feel. But enough about talking about Team Rose and enough talk about, whatever else. We gotta move on to the next stage with Team Sonic, Mystic Mansion. And this stage kind of suffers from the same problems.
What a castle!
I wonder what's next.
Sure feels like Halloween with all these ghosts. Not bad.
Yeah, even Sonic agrees. I definitely should have tried to get this done faster and post this on Halloween. What's wrong with me? It would have been the perfect episode to go up, too. At least the week of Halloween. I don't know. I could have made it work, somehow. It's like when I did Spider-Man around October last year, and that had a Halloween section. I counted that as a Halloween series. But I mean... This stage continues forward with having the really creative visuals and things like that. Really creative stage mechanics. Rather than just being flipping the stage around this time, the switches in this stage end up completely altering the layout of the stage in spots and adding on new sections. It's like that door was suspended in midair and didn't really lead to anywhere. It had a funky little skeleton guy hanging out with it, and then we hit the switch and suddenly there's a whole pathway here, and it's like, wow, wham, boom, kazow, and things like that, you know? It is definitely, again, really visually pleasing, and you can definitely get into the spooky vibes they were going for with this. But unfortunately, again, this ends up just being a really long and tiring stage to get through. I don't think we end up losing any lives or anything like that to make the stage feel longer. Or at least, if I'm remembering correctly, there's nothing that causes any backtracking to happen with these stages. Or at least what I went through recording, I guess. So there's nothing like that made the stages feel especially that much longer. They are just, by default, really, really, really long stages. And, oh, there's the alternate mode to the Wizard Ghost I was talking about. Too bad we destroyed it and can't tell what it was supposed to be doing. Oh well. We've also got this segment up here where the bobsled returns, sort of. Rather than being a bobsled that we control, it's instead on a set track, and we've got to try and pay attention to what we're doing and jump over obstacles. In this case, there's not really any steering that you have to do with the power character, so losing them doesn't really affect you too much. But of course, if you get hit, you end up losing Sonic on the back, and that causes you to slow down a lot. And of course, if you get hit 3 times, you end up automatically getting knocked out, and you have to start backtracking to your last checkpoint. But overall, it's not that bad. There's going to be a couple segments like that scattered about. And I feel like that works better than just the bobsled segments where you're controlling it, because then you're not having to worry about steering, and it lets you get a little more time to kind of focus on what you're doing and dodge around obstacles. And also here, we've got another funky skeleton dude, where we gotta hit the switches and move his arms around so we can make progress up and forward. It's really cool. Again, I really like this stage visually and aesthetically, and I feel like it could have just been so much better if it just wasn't so long. Maybe I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, but it's just the problem overall. Sonic Heroes, I feel like the game starts out fine. The stages don't feel that long, and it ends up feeling a lot more balanced and just kind of a fun romp. But as you start to get to this point in the game where the stages become incredibly long, I just feel like there could have been a lot more time put into just working through trying to figure out what the optimal stage length would be and sort of balancing the game out so it's a little more even and fair for all the different teams. Because you have things like Team Rose where their stages are just so dang short, and in comparison, especially at this point in the game, sometimes they are like, there's a difference in like 7 or 8 minutes in stage length time. And also, the triangle jump just not working here does not help. I don't really understand what was happening there, but it just had to end up reworking things and trying to figure that out. But yeah, I feel like overall, the stage length in this game, I feel like it could have been balanced a heck of a lot better. And if on average the stages were somewhere between the length of Team Rose's stages and the length of stages like this overall, I feel like the game would have been a lot stronger. Sonic Heroes in general has kind of a mixed reputation among fans, I feel like, where it doesn't have quite the same like storytelling power that the Sonic Adventure games have, and it doesn't have quite the same like focus on really fast-paced, high-speed gameplay like later Sonic games do, like Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Colors and things like that. And this is definitely the beginning of where Sonic games in general, they really started to kind of fall out of favor with the fan base. The two primary games that followed this, which would be Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06, of course, are kind of notorious for how they're received and looked at in the fan base's eyes. And Sonic Heroes kind of exists in sort of a middle ground, I think. After Sonic 06, we ended up getting Sonic Unleashed, and while that game too had a selection of issues with it that fans did not always like greet with open arms and really gravitate towards, especially when it came to Sonic Unleashed Werehog stages, it was definitely an instance of mixed reception there. it really felt like those games started to kind of find their footing again with the more speed-based main Sonic gameplay. And Sonic Heroes, it just kind of falls in the middle somewhere, where conceptually I love this game, but there are certain aspects to it that I wish were just better. I will always think I would like Sonic Heroes better than a game like Unleashed, because rather than it just being focused entirely around Sonic, which a lot of Sonic games ended up being like for a really long time, it ended up... It has the same feel as Sonic Adventure and Adventure DX, where you're focusing on a cast of characters and a broader, grander sort of story. Especially considering the fact that Sonic Adventure, Adventure DX, Sonic Heroes, and Shadow the Hedgehog, they all have that like chain of continuous continuity that I talked about that I really liked in these games. And then after this point, the games start to drop that, and they start to feel a lot more isolated. I don't know. That's all just my opinion, I guess. And hello, we seem to be trapped in a otherworldly void, which is something I managed to gloss over. We've gone from a mansion to some kind of alternate dimension that is swapping between modes depending on what switches we're hitting and things like that. What we gotta do here is we've got to go down each one of these paths and hit all the different switches in order to make the end of the stage appear. Which, yes, we're finally almost at the end of the stage, 9 minutes in. And, we've got to go down the different paths, and the different paths have the, different layouts depending on what character it needs you to control. You hit the switch and it switches things back up. And for instance, now we've got to switch to speed, and we've got to homing attack our way across the pumpkin ghosts here, which is a bit tricky. It's trickier than you would really think, primarily because those pumpkin ghosts, when you go to homing attack them, you've got to kind of wait for them to fully manifest before you do it, because if you don't, sometimes you can end up just kind of falling off and falling to your doom. And now we switch to the power formation, where we got to use our glide to get across. And we've got this souped up super version of the Hammer Robot over here, which we're going to Team Blast, probably. Yeah. The difference between this guy and the previous version of the Hammer Robot is that this guy wears a helmet, which by extension makes his one weak point at the top of his head completely covered up. And it makes him very resistant to damage. But that is going to be it for the stage, finally. Definitely took its time getting going, and now we're in a peaceful lake outside of the castle courtyard or something like that. I don't really know. And one more note, just because of how long these stages end up getting, you really gotta try to get a feel for them to actually get through the stages in time for good ranks. It's a bit of a problem. But now, it's time for our very next boss fight.
What do you think, Omega?
Sensors jammed. Real Eggman ID not possible.
We'll just have to find out, won't we?
What's the matter? Cold feet? Well then, here I come. Get them.
No time for messing around. Let's get ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
And now we follow up what I considered the worst stage in the game, or worst stages, with what I consider the worst boss fight in the game. The Robot Storm, kind of the sequel to the Robot Carnival, except this is much, much, much longer. It is a lot of phases of robots to fight, and it is not easy to get through. Especially with Team Dark, which is, of course, the fight that I decided I wanted to show for this. Because things like that happen. And things like that ended up happening a lot. You do not get to see the majority of the attempts I made at this fight, but because of the way this proceeds and the way the overall stage is set up and how easy it is to accidentally fall off the edge and things like that, I'm pretty sure trying to get through this one fight took me about 20 minutes. And yes, you can bet I was fuming afterwards. This is not an easy fight to get through, especially when you throw in the enemies that heal people, especially when you throw in the really big enemies with lots of health that can very easily knock you off the edge. And for the most part, I don't really get why they made these fights, if I'm being perfectly honest. We can, of course, use our Team Blast in order to knock out a bunch of enemies at once. But then with Team Dark, we have the problem of the fact that they stop time. And it, by extension, causes the boss fight to stop. And the next wave of enemies will not appear until time resumes. So it definitely has its share of problems with that. But this really likes to throw the really durable enemies at you, and really likes to test your nerves by putting them right up close to edges and things like that. And like I said, I don't really get why these boss fights are here. Both Robot Carnival and Robot Storm, while conceptually they're not bad, I feel like there could have been more thought put into those fights and replacing them with something else. Because going forwards, the 7th set of stages after these particular stages are going to be our last stages. And then we have one more boss fight after that, of course. Which means there's no third team fight. Team Dark never ends up having an encounter with Team Rose, and by extension, Team Chaotix never ends up having an encounter with Team Sonic in this game. And that feels really awkward. It feels like that's the sort of thing that really could have been planned out a lot better. Because if you included a third team fight, you could have had 3 team fights, kind of going back and forth between the different teams, and then you could have coupled that with 4 regular boss fights. And you could have left out the Robot Storm fights altogether. And I feel like I would have really preferred that, and I feel like the boss fights in general would have been a lot stronger with these not here. Because much like the stages that accompany this fight just feels like a giant time sink, especially when you had my kind of bad run of luck, where the stage just, the boss fight just kept messing you up and knocking you around, and it just kept wanting to keep going. Not to mention, we do have these segments here where we're flipping around to different parts of the stage. Unlike the Robot Carnival fight, which just took place in the one battle arena over and over again, throughout the different waves, it has you switching locations between different areas, and that further increases the chances of something going funky, and then you end up falling off and having to start the boss fight over again. Because yeah, in case you couldn't guess, it's a boss fight, there are no checkpoints here. And this is a very lengthy boss fight, so every time you mess up, you have to start the entire thing over again. I'm not going to be showing the whole thing, of course, but arguably I would say Team Chaotix has the worst version of this fight, just because it also starts to throw in the cannon gimmicks, where you have to shoot your teammates off the side of the stage in order to destroy the enemies and make the fight go forward. Team Dark does not have that sort of thing going for it, thankfully. But overall, it's still a very, very lengthy fight with a lot of really tough enemies that are very difficult to get through. Especially with guys like this, who hide their weak point and prevent you from doing any kind of damage to them with anybody but the power character. It's just ended up being... This whole section ended up just being a trial to get through. And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. It's probably just a skill issue where I'm just not good enough at it to really logically get through this in the most methodical way. But you can tell definitely here, as things kind of come to a close, that I'm being very cautious and very careful with how I time out my team blasts and things like that, and which direction I'm attacking in, because I very desperately do not want to fall off again and start the fight again. But thankfully with that, I believe that is going to be the conclusion to the fight once time resumes. Yeah. Just under 6 minutes long for that one boss fight. And multiply that by, like, 4 for how many attempts I took at it. And you end up with a very irritated Sparky. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. This is your good friend Sparky signing off. And I'll see you next time. Enjoy the bonus bits.
Sonic, you sure this is the right way?
I saw Shadow and Eggman head this way. This has gotta be the right way.
But it's so spooky here.
Maybe that's the ghost of Shadow we saw earlier.
Woo! Stop it, Knuckles!
Inside the castle.
Sure is spooky in here.
Initiating interior search. Charge. Annihilate charge.
Trying to stop us now? Ha! What a joke!
What did you say? Now I'm really mad. Get them.
Payback time, Eggman! You guys ready?
All right!
Ready!